disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So now that Tucker Carlson's out of Fox News, they are scrambling because they know that their number one person, their number one, glued viewership, kind of the stronghold of their primetime lineup, is gone, which means Fox News is crumbling based on its own decisions. And here's what even Forbes is saying about this. Fox News ratings at 8 p.m. dropped 50% after Tucker Carlson's firing. Completely plummeted after they, let go one of their top number one anchors of that network. And it was most watched by a majority of the country. A huge majority of the country that was watching cable news was watching Tucker Carlson, including Democrats. Even most Democrats, there was more of them that were watching Tucker Carlson than they were watching Rachel Maddow. That's how influential this Tucker Carlson was to the country. And since he was left at Fox News, fired out by the Murdochs, now they're scrambling around to find a filler for the 8 p.m. slot. But here's a bit of backstory that they're not going to tell you about this firing because there's been a lot of speculations. There's been a lot of theories. I've had my own assumptions. Other people have had their own assumptions. But here's what's making headlines of this. And this is pretty interesting. So Ben Smith points out that there's a scoop. And it says the Murdochs, who own the Fox empire, Rupert Murdoch and family, talked with Zelensky in March, and Carlson's firing ended his public and private pressure on pro-Ukraine House Republicans. So that could be troublesome for someone who happens to be skeptical on the idea of sending millions and billions and trillions of dollars off to arms sales to a bunch of neo-Nazis so that we can use Ukraine as cannon fodder, and actually thought critical of it and maybe actually made some interesting points that the rest of mainstream media completely went down the rabbit hole of pushing and elevating this war. So here's what the article is saying about this. So Fox News executive chairman Rupert Murdoch held a previous unreported call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this spring, in which the two discussed the war and the anniversary of the deaths of Fox News journalists last March. The Ukrainian president had a similar conversation with Lachlan Murdoch on March 15th, which Zelensky noted in a little notice aside during a national broadcast last month. The conversations came weeks before the Murdochs fired their biggest star and most outspoken critic of the American support for Ukraine, Tucker Carlson. Senior Ukraine officials had made their objections to Carlson's coverage known to Fox executives, but Zelensky did not raise it on the calls with the Murdochs, according to one person familiar with the details of the call. So, the fact that they had conversations with Zelensky prior to the fact that Tucker Carlson was skeptical about this, and how Tucker Carlson was one of the most vocal voices, especially in mainstream media, when it comes to providing context and providing a different perspective of this war, it seems very, very suspicious that the fact that this was kept in the dark and we're just learning about this now, and the timing of all this, it seems like they were trying to fire their last voice of anti-war perspective. And the fact that you can't really find an anti-war voice anywhere on mainstream media, which is why people have to come to YouTube and podcasting, and that's why they're trying to do everything that they can to stranglehold YouTube, podcasting, TikTok, and so on and so forth. Because you're never going to find it on mainstream media when it's brought to you by the military-industrial complex, when it's brought to you by Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, all these companies. And here's what's even, again, proving this theory correct, is Politico stating that Pentagon officials were cheering Tucker Carlson's ouster, saying good riddance. the former Fox host ridiculed top DOD leaders over Biden-era politics. So, of course, having their one predominant person that was viewed by the majority of the country who happened to have a different perspective and was analyzing the war and trying to push more of a peace and prosperity and having a detente, of course they're going to cheer when he gets fired. Which again makes me speculate my theory, which is the fact that Tucker Carlson decided to go more anti-war when he lost his establishment advertisers. He was able to go more, vocal on being critical of the war, being critical of the war machine, and that was one of the last straws, especially with the Murdochs now confirming phone calls with Zelensky that he was ousted from Fox News. And now we don't have an anti-war voice in the mainstream media establishment. Not a single person critical of the war machine or its efforts. And here's just, again, to show how lunacy of the mainstream media, the absolute outrage of them complaining that Tucker Carlson's firing is such a victory because Tucker Carlson is icky to them, but they don't get to the actual context of what Tucker Carlson was different about the mainstream media. Why Tucker Carlson was such an outsider. Why Tucker Carlson was a different character compared to the rest of the media. They never highlight on that. They never mention that. And they purposely don't for this reason. But take a look at this.
So, just for the record, I don't spend a lot of time watching Fox News or the BS Factory, as CNN's Jim Acosta more colorfully dubbed them this weekend. Personally, I prefer my news and information to be grounded in reality rather than monetizing my amygdala to keep me on edge and buying my pillows in gold.
No, I'd rather have my news brought to you by the worst of the establishment, military empires and Pfizer and Moderna and big oil tech companies and big monopolies and social media censorship. I'd rather have my news monetized by the evils of society, not by, a pillow. That's Joy-Ann Reid really, really hammering on the good-heartedness of her. She really has principles. She really has stance. I'd rather have my news monetized by the evils of society so they're actually buying out the stories that I'm allowed to report, which is why it is nothing more than a propaganda machine.
However, according to Media Matters, The Root, Crooks and Liars, and others who watch Fox News so you don't have to, at least 3 times in the last month, well, Tucker Carlson took time off.
I love how she noted 3 publications to say that, trust their opinions so you don't have to watch Fox News. How dare you actually watch the show and actually voice an opinion based on yourselves and actually come with your own consensus of what you're watching. Just trust the people that we're recommending. You don't have to watch Fox News. Someone else already did, and they're going to tell you exactly why it's bad. Don't watch it so you actually form your own opinion. Just trust us. Trust us. Listen to them.
Off from badgering strangers in parks and bouncy houses to demand that they show him their children's unmasked faces, to refer to moi as the race lady. The race lady. Why would they call me that? I used to run track in high school, but honestly, I'm not that fast. So what else could it be? What else could it be?
Watch The Race Lady on MSNBC. Harvard-educated but totally oppressed. An absurdly racist claim, says the race lady from Harvard. Joy Reid, the race lady over at MSNBC. Here's the race lady from MSNBC finally putting her Harvard degree to work. Oh, wait a second. Harvard-educated race lady? Now you're really confusing us. Well, Joy-Ann Reid, the race lady over on MSNBC, took a quick break from haranguing Whitey yesterday.
Did he say Whitey? Oh, honey, Tuckums. Is this really about me fixating on race, or is it about you fixating on race? When you recently went...
Oh, joy, 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 sweetums. You realize you are doing the exact same for yourself. You're doing the exact same on MSNBC. You're taking things out of context to put an identity and put race involved into these scenarios, which again, it's amazing that the most critical things you could say about Tucker Carlson, you pulled out random segments about him discussing race. And by the way, not even mentioning what the story involved in this is. You notice how one of them was talking about the effectiveness of masks, but yet you took the 2 seconds, that little soundbite of him calling you the race lady and making it a bigger proportion than it needs to be. Oh my God! A white man is telling me that I'm the race lady and just making it so absurd. Not actually focusing on the story that he is saying about this. Not actually focusing on the context. You're doing exactly what you're saying Tucker Carlson is doing. And yes, I agree. You know, there's a lot of things in Tucker Carlson I disagree with. But on principle level, it's about the story that matters, not the 2 seconds that he talked about you. It's about the story at hand. He was the one that challenged about masks and mandates. He was the one that challenged about the war machine. He was the one that challenged the censorship and the tyranny of big tech oligarchs in coordinates with the intelligence community. Who else in mainstream media bothered to do that? Not you, Joy-Ann Reid. You're too focused on the fact that Tucker Carlson called you the race lady. You made this personal. And I thought journalists were not supposed to make things personal.
Went off on me for continuing to mask up post-vaccine while jogging in crowded Central Park. You weirdly, as you did in that montage, threw in my attending Harvard. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm sensitive to this stuff, but it felt kind of like a dog whistle. I mean, did you want to go to Harvard? Did they reject you? And you think, oh, yeah, they let the race lady in. Blah, affirmative action, blah. Well, listen, let me cheer you up, okay? I got into Harvard and, okay, Yale, Vassar, and the University of Denver, too, because I had a really high GPA and fantastic SAT scores. And that's how affirmative action works, love. Schools search for smart people from diverse backgrounds so that these schools won't be as dry as all the major sports leagues were before they desegregated. See? And just because, you know, maybe you didn't.
This is exactly why Tucker Carlson was #1 with viewers while stuff like this gets aired. This is why cable news, every other show on cable news is failing. And then they just ousted their most popular person. Why? Because Tucker Carlson, again, a lot of things I disagree with, but at least he takes the time to actually engage with his viewers. Joy-Ann Reid is making this all about herself. Joy-Ann Reid is literally making this making a personal attack on this. She's not discussing what Tucker Carlson said in those stories. She's not aware of the criticalness of this. She's not being critically aware. She's just absolutely making absurdities about herself, about of what Tucker Carlson said about her, and then blowing it out of proportion. What does this have to do with you going to Harvard? What do stories about vaccine mandates and mask wearing have anything to do with you and race and Harvard? Like, it's so ridiculous.
Didn't have great grades and great test scores and needed your girlfriend's daddy to help you get into college doesn't mean that you don't have amazing people in your life who love you. I mean, you got all that Swanson money, right? That sticks for everybody. Woo! And, you had fun at Trinity after, you got bought in, right? By the way, what was the Dan White Society? You know what? Moving on. And just...
You know what? I could look up the Dan White Society and actually have one of my writers or my assistants or anyone, or even just pull out my phone and look it up. But moving on. Because I got gotta build this up to more of my speed. Like, I gotta make people feel like I'm vulnerable. I'm the victim in this. Tucker Carlson called me the race lady in a few outtakes seconds. Completely out of context. I made that montage to make me feel like the victim in this. And I'm a smart person who went to Harvard, and I'm still not informing my audience. I'm just saying, if you're a smart lady, Joy-Ann Reid, first of all, if you call yourself a journalist, you would take 2 seconds before your broadcast to actually maybe research the Dan White Society, so you know what the hell you're talking about. Also, come up with a better comeback to Tucker Carlson than this absolute charade. And also, you would actually follow the notes and follow the trajectory of why Tucker Carlson got ousted, and look at the difference between you and someone like him. And maybe point out the fact that, yes, he's getting advertisement by MyPillow, but MyPillow is not purposely perpetrating a war. You know who is? Raytheon. Who's advertising? Who's Raytheon advertising on? MSNBC. And who's pushing the war agenda? MSNBC. You know who wasn't? Tucker Carlson. He was actually analyzing the war. Maybe you should take that into account with all your GPA. And I'm just saying, as a B- C student myself, I shouldn't say that. I actually had pretty good grades, but I didn't go to Harvard. I went to Niagara College for broadcast production, and I took media analysis courses. And this is, again, why I do this channel. Is I want to examine the media, and I want to learn from the media. I want to learn and understand why I'm watching it and what's behind the media. And I feel like I'm the adult in this conversation. I feel like this is like two preschoolers, picking a fight with one another, and I have to be the adult in the room to say that you're both acting ridiculous. But this is where the mainstream media, again, overhypes the fact that Tucker Carlson gets fired without any context, without any real criticism, without any real deep dive of what Tucker Carlson did to oust himself. And completely just, again, this is all about the fact that Tucker Carlson was different from them. And different in a way that the rest of the country was starving for. They're starving for someone who can outspeak against the war machine. They're starving for someone who's critical of the establishment. They're starving for someone who could call out the Democrats and Republicans. They're starving for someone who would acknowledge Julian Assange. Joy-Ann Reid has never done any of that. But I guess I can't really make comments about her, because then she'll make personal comments that I'm, making her the victim again. That I'm attacking her schooling and her studies at Harvard and went to this school, and how I'm such a credited journalist. I'm apparently making personal attacks on her. But it just goes to show the absurdity and kind of the narcissism in mainstream media. Like how these anchors, instead of actually focusing on journalism as a principle, they're more focused on personal attacks and making them the victims of when another journalist is calling them out. It just seems like such a slur of establishment BS, really.